workshop and look at the next question. After Latin and Greek, which language or group of languages is numerically the most important for the ancient world? In which two countries can the bulk of the inscriptions preserving these languages be found? So this is a question you can only answer by visiting the Languages Scripts tab here on the right, where you can get a survey. You can, of course, try individual languages and see what happens, but that will be quite time-consuming. If you go to the language portal, you get a survey of languages, and the classification is by number of attestations. You can change that if you want. You get some information about the family and the branch of the family that this particular language belongs to. And you also get some information here with the plus or the min of how well the coverage of Trismegistus is. So for the ones with plus, it's quite good. It's always hard to make estimations, but we have certainly I'd say in most cases, 90 to 95% of the texts. I think for Greek, we're working on that, as Jana said. But for instance, for a language as Akkadian, it's not good. There are actually a lot more texts than the 7,000 we have in the database right now. Also for the other ones, sometimes, I mean, I have to adapt, because Iberian is now also a lot better, Faliscan is also better. So we improve that, and sometimes I forget to add that actually our coverage is now better. But to return to the question, you see that in number 3, ancient North Arabian, that's a bit of a surprise for some of you. Maybe it was a surprise for me. I didn't know about this large group of texts, which is covered by Okiana database. Currently 37,000 inscriptions. They are mostly short, though, mostly just a name, 2 names, maybe sometimes was here and the equivalent of that. But nonetheless, there are 40,000 and almost. And as to the question, in which 2 modern countries are they are most preserved? You can see here by the survey that it's especially in Jordan and in Syria. So dates, well, we don't know much about their dates. They're very broadly dated, but there are also ones from Saudi Arabia. You can see here, ancient North Arabian is actually not really a language. It's a group of languages, hence the question. But the individual languages, maybe one day we'll split them up. It's always difficult. Where does one language start and another one end? Particularly for languages such as these ones, or for some of the Italic languages, there's a lot of discussion. What is a dialect and what is a language? So that's the reason, the background. If you want, you can change to the countries to modern regions, provinciae, or ancient regions. So if I select provinciae, for instance, then you'll see that it's Arabia, the Provincia Arabia. So that for those of you who want to have the Roman perspective, you can switch there also to the region. It's as you want. Okay, question number 9 is a question for publications specifically. So can you find Latin text on stone published before the year 1800? So this is a question you can't answer through the central search interface. The fact that they are published before 1800 is not possible to do through the central search. You have to go to texts. You enter Latin here under language, and material is stone. But now it's the edition date, and if I click that here, you see that what you can fill in. In fact, you can just type in, as you see here, before 1800. You can also use smaller than 1800, but before 1800 works. So if I search for Latin text on stone edited before the year 1800, it takes a bit of time, but that's good. Then I can prepare my tea. Maybe a bit too long to prepare the tea. So here's the answer, just under 100 texts. And here are some examples. Let's pick one. So you can see that this particular text, TM189349, there is a publication we have in Trismegistos from 1747 by Kyriakos Akonidanos. Of course, needless to say, we are not exhausted for the period before 1800, but perhaps you are looking for an old edition of a Latin text, so this function can be useful after all. The second part of that question, from which early pre-1800 publication does TM have the most epigraphic publication records in the database? You have to answer in a slightly different way. And this is something that perhaps many of you don't know yet, but we have a function here called recent editions. It's a bit misleading because it can also be used for looking for old editions, such as here. So if I click that, the recent editions, you actually get a survey of what's new. So in TM, we increasingly have also inedited material. So especially in papyrology, there are many people who send us their publications before they are published and say, could you please add these in the Trismegistos database so you can give them numbers so I can put the numbers in my publication. So we do that then, and then of course the publication date is, well, entered by us as 2020. Of course, we're now 2021, so these probably have not appeared already and should actually be labeled 2021 question mark now. So these are forthcoming. So you see there's quite a lot, but we also have the publications of 2020, so you can see which recent publications do we have in Trismegistos with a number of editions, and you can click that and then you go to that particular publication from 2019 and which entries we have in the database. However, suppose that you are a epigrapher and you do not care about papyri, they're just a nuisance, they make the list too long, then you can select here under no discipline restrictions, papyrology, LDAB, so for the literary papyri, or epigraphy. So in this case, select epigraphy, and then you'll only get the publications or editions that are related to what we call epigraphy as defined before. So this is between 2017 and 2020. So remember, I was interested in everything before the year 1800. So we start from the year 1500, and then to keep it manageable, it's automatically reduced to 1871, which is the year from which we start to have more publications. But if I then select 1800 here, then this is a list of all epigraphical texts for which we have publications dated before the year 1800. And if I select here to classify here for editions, you see that it's this book, Talnicher Antiquitates Urbis Lavacensis from 1693, for which we have most editions. Needless to say, again, this may not be true. There may be another book which we do not have because we do not claim to be exhaustive. But in any case, recent editions might be very useful for you if you are looking for newly edited texts. We try to actualize this as much as possible so that you can use it. Okay, so question number 10. I'm going to change slightly because the way this is phrased now is more difficult to answer than it was 2 weeks ago. The reason is that we have changed the database structure, and Runic is no longer treated as a language, which of course it isn't really. And it's treated as a language, which makes this particular question a bit more difficult. So let's say that the question would be, where in Spain have Celtiberian texts been found? Can you find a map? So if you want to look for from which region does a certain group of texts come, it's of course possible to go to languages and script and then select Celtiberian. Here it's number 15, and you then get here, they're all from Spain except one from Portugal. Of course, that's a bit general, so if you want to look at modern regions, they're from Aragon, Castilla y León. We do not have the modern region for a sizable amount, Navarra. But this, of course, is very abstract. You may want to see a map. So what's the best way to get a map? You can look for Celtiberian Spain. And then get this result, 274. Do not want to show them a map of Egypt, that's useless, but the ancient world in general. And then you'll get a map, but of course it will be a map modern countries, which you already knew because you were looking for Spain. And even if you're looking for Roman provinces, well, this is Roman provinces. It's the Hispania Quiterio. It's too large to be significant. So in this case, the best answer is to go through the places database. So there you start from the geographical criterion, and your first interest is in Spain. So you click Spain, and you get a survey of places that we have in the places database for Spain. But now you are interested in where texts have been found, not in the places themselves. And this you do by clicking here one of the filters. So currently there is no source filter, but I want to filter provenances because I want to know where they have been found. So I select that, and now the map changes to where have texts been found in Spain. So the bigger the bubble, the more texts have been found. And now I can select the language filter. I activate the language filter, and then not just any language, but Celtiberian. And then I get a much better idea where all of these places are, where the most important places are. So it's this region here where most of the Celtiberian texts have been found. So this is the best way to get a detailed map, is to go through places and create your map in this particular way. Let's do something similar. Question number 11, can you get a map of places in Italy where Etruscan texts have been found? So it's actually the same. You go to places. I want a map of places in Italy, so I click Italy. And I'm interested in where texts have been found. So I go to, place have been found, filter provenances. The big bubble is Rome. It's so big that all the rest are just very small bubbles in comparison, because Rome is so important. But now I activate the language filter because I want to be able to select Etruscan only. That takes a while. Any language, no Etruscan. So we have 10,046 Etruscan texts in the database, and this is their distribution. So you can see very clearly that, of course, it is in Etruria that we find most Etruscan texts. If you select this, for instance, Clusium, then you see that this is the biggest bubble, but you can also scroll down and then get a list. So it says here Clusium QZ 2,994 texts. So there's your answer, and there's your map as was found in, as was the question in number 11. Question number 12 is actually also more of a places question. How often is the province of Lusitania attested in the 2nd century AD? So I go to places, and well, I can go to Lusitania, and then here is Lusitania is mentioned, but this is the combination of attestations and provenances. Let's filter on attestations. And you see here that there are 411 attestations of Lusitania. To filter that chronologically, I have to go to the detail page of Lusitania. So Lusitania is the province of modern Portugal. You can see some information here about the different variants. It says here 37 texts found or written in Lusitania, and then an explanation why this is not the correct number, really. It's the complicated problem which I explained to you before, but we are not interested now in provenance. We are interested in place name attestations. So if I click that, I find 408 references to Lusitania in documentary sources. So we have answered that question now, except for attested in the 2nd century AD. So I have to change the chronological information. So I go 2nd century AD to 8th century AD, no, 2nd century AD to 2nd century AD, and then I got my answer, which is 253 references in the 2nd century AD. One next question in places, and then I'm going to skip a couple of places. You can return to them later, perhaps. But how many places does Trismegistus have in the database for Pakistan? Same principle. You just go to places and you select Pakistan. You get a map with the places for which we have coordinates. But these are not all places. As you can see, if you scroll further down, there are actually a number of places where we do not have coordinates for. You can see the map indication here. That means it's on the map. We have coordinates for them. But for some of these other places, we do not have coordinates. That may just be our problem. It may be that we have not found the coordinates yet. We did not have the time to enter them. But in some cases, it will be just unknown where these places are. So we cannot put them on the map. So that's why we do not have coordinates. So you can see here, all in all, it's very modest. Of course, it's quite far for the Greek world, especially, of course, for the Latin. So we do not have that many places in the database. Okay, I'm going to skip questions number 14 and 15, and then go to question number 16, maybe. Can you find a stone on which the ancient name of the city of Rennes is mentioned? So you want to know the ancient name of the city of Rennes, and then find the stone on which this is mentioned. And this is something you can easily do through the central search by searching for Rennes, which then recognizes unambiguously that this is the provenance of a text. Well, in fact, you do not want the provenance, you want a attestation of this place, and then there are only 3, so it's already narrowed down quite a lot. If I go to the detail, you see there are only 3 texts from the ancient world that we currently have in the database that refer to Rennes. What was the extra? It should be on stone. Well, they're all on stone apparently. So you can pick any of the 3. Let's pick the first one. So it's a text from Lyon, and if you want to see the actual reference, you have to scroll down and go to the Places tab here on the left, and you get a list of the place names mentioned in this particular text. So let me click this one, and you'll see that this is a place name attestation of the Pagus Condatensis, and that is Condate, which is the ancient name for what's nowadays called Rennes. So that way you found your answer. Question number 17. How many ancient texts on metal are preserved in Edinburgh? So let's try the central search engine, Edinburgh, and what else do I type? Metal. It is interpreted in a correct way, as Edinburgh, the city in which the text is preserved, and metal, the material of the writing surface. So the answer is 62. If I want to get a complete list, I can find it here. Apparently, most of them are in the National Museum of Scotland. Don't know whether there are any other ones. Let's have a look. The second page. No, they're all in the National Museum of Scotland, although we have other collections in Edinburgh. They do not seem to contain any texts on metal. So that's an easy one. It's also possible to answer this question through the collections portal. You can then either click the country and then try to find Edinburgh, but it's quite time consuming sometimes. That's then B and Longriddy, or is it here? No, it's here. Well, it can be quite complicated. It may be easier to just look for it, Edinburgh. And then the difference with the central search is that here you search for collections, and so you have to choose one collection. These are some of the collections, all of the collections we have for Edinburgh, and you can see the National Museum for Scotland is the one which has most text, and you can then fine tune here to metal, bronze, select that, and here is your list. There may sometimes be small differences between the figures you get, because here, as you can see, what you find are inventory numbers. Sometimes there are more inventory numbers for a single object. So it's possible that one object has two numbers because it's two fragments or because they've renumbered. And then what's counted here are inventory numbers, whereas in texts, what's counted there are the ancient texts themselves. Another question on collections is 18. Which collection in the US contains most inscriptions on stone? Is there one from the Roman provincia of Asia? And why are the answers provided by TM to these questions problematic? So let's start with the first. Which collection in the US contains most inscriptions on stone? So if I go to the homepage of collections and then select the US, I get a map of the US with the collections, and the bubbles are sized according to the number of texts that they contain. These are mostly, the large bubbles are mostly large collections of papyri. So in this case, I am not interested in papyri, and my interest is in stone. So I can change that here by not saying any material, but stone. And then the map adapts. Still in the Northeast, I got most, but it is slightly different. And then you can see here how many items on stone do you have. And there's one in Falls Church American Foundation for the Study of Man, 2 items. Wouldn't know where that is, to be honest, Falls Church. So this is the answer. Can you find, which collection in the US contains most inscriptions on stone? The biggest bubble is the bubble for Ann Arbor Kelsey Museum. So this is the answer to that question. Is there one from the Roman provincia of Asia? Well, I've already filtered on stone. Now I should filter to provenance. And my interest is in the ancient provincia. I have to wait a little bit. And then he says, any Roman provincia? Well, not just any Roman provincia, but Asia. So I select Asia. And then I see there's only one collection in the US which has a inscription on stone from Asia, and that's Buffalo, the Museum of Natural Science. That is to say, and then we come to the final part of this question, why are the answers provided by TM to these questions problematic? Well, obviously, because for inscriptions, we still have to enter a lot of information about where these texts are. There's this button here saying calculate coverage. I'll do that. It takes a little while, but that tells you for how many records we have this information. And so for text on stone, we have only 14% of the text on stone have an inventory number or are preserved in situ, meaning we have a lot of work to do for inscriptions, finding out where they are, and this answer may turn out to be incorrect. So for papyri, it's different. For Egypt, we have inventory numbers for almost everything, let's say 99%, but for inscriptions, it is rather limited, and so this answer you have to be very careful about. Question number 90 is about abbreviations. So at the beginning of a Latin inscription, you find DMS. The usual solution of this abbreviation, dis manibus sacrum, does not seem to fit. Can you think of any other possibilities? So this is probably one of the lesser known and lesser used sections of TM, which is really only a kind of experiment I did, I think it was 8 years ago, something like that. With entity recognition. So the data in there are already a bit outdated, certainly. But to my knowledge, it can still be useful. So where can you find it? Well, it's under formulae, which right now contains only the Latin abbreviations, so it's abbreviations and formulae, but we hope to expand on that at some later stage. And if you click search here, then you can search for abbreviations. So have to be careful, caveat emptor, and you can explain there why you have to be careful using this database, but if you use it just to get ideas, then of course it's okay. And you can choose either abbreviations of individual words or abbreviation clusters of multiple words. So if in this case I type in DMS, because that's what's on the stone, exact and spaces relevant, and I click search, then I get a list of what DMS stands for according to the Klaus-Slaby database. So as you can see, in the overwhelming majority of cases, DMS stands for dis manibus sacrum. And also you can see that there are many typos. Many of these typos were in the Klaus-Slaby database when I did this 8 years ago. Some have disappeared, others are still there. So for instance, dis manibus sacrum instead of sacrum. But there is also one entry, donum merito solvit, which is really something else. So if I click that one, donum merito solvit, here is the list of all attestations. There's only a single one. If I go to full text EDCS, then you can see that here at the end it's donum merito solvit. So this is the alternative abbreviation for this particular DMS. The next question, question number 20, is what are the possible solutions for the abbreviation Q in a Latin inscription? So if I'm now looking for individual words, just a Q, then here is are the possibilities. So as you can see, there are quite a lot. And if you scroll down, of course, then you start to get more errors, also just typos, but on top, even there are a lot of possibilities. And and their frequency. And if you click on those, then you get an idea. So the possible solutions are many, but quintus, quinti, quinto are the most important, and qui is also relatively frequent. If I go back, it's also possible to do this the other way around. So if you have an abbreviated word, that's the next question. In which ways is the word curavit abbreviated, and which one is the most common? If I click curavit and search, here are all the possible abbreviations of curavit. The most common one is just the C, by far. But it's also possible to abbreviate cur, or cu, or cura, curav, just a Q, curavi, curab without an I, and so on. So these are all the possibilities. And if you want to see the attestation, you have to follow the links to curavit, to Klaus Slav. That's, as I say, it's something rather old. It would need to be redone, but you know, there are other things which have higher priority. So, but I just wanted to show you because it might be interesting for you. Question number 22. You remember that Bingen once published a Latin inscription from Delphi, but forgot where he did so. And this happens to me all the time, that you know that someone published something, but you forgot where he did. Can you find it? Well, in fact, you can answer this question through the central search interface by just typing in Bingen Latin inscription Delphi. Go. And all of these things are interpreted in the way we want from the very beginning. Latin is the language of the text, Delphi is the provenance, Bingen is the editor of the text, and it's an inscription. And there's only one, so that's convenient. And it's this one here. So it's an inscription, TM177093, année epigraphique 1967-455. And you can see here, Bulletin de correspondance hellénique 91, Jean Bingen. There's even a PDF, so you can click that. In this case, it brings you to the page of the Bulletin de correspondance hellénique where you can find the PDF. You have to navigate to issue number 91 and to the article of Jean Bingen yourself, because we have not done that. So here it's the price edict of Diocletianus, which he studied there or edited there. Did Bingen, and that's what the question goes on, did Bingen regularly edit Latin texts? Well, this is a quantitative question. You have to go to the editors page. So either you go to editors on the home page, or you just click here and follow the link to Bingen Jean. And that brings you to the page of Jean Bingen. There is information about sometimes when he was born, when he died, in this case, and the nationality, but that's not always true. But there's a range of his editions. So you can see when he was active. You can limit that to a specific year. For instance, if you click 1969, then you only get the text he edited in 1969, if that's what you're interested in. But here are all his editions. So you see he's a very prolific man, very kind man also. I knew him, and always very friendly, even though he was a big name. And you can see he mainly did Greek but both pottery and stone. He was both a papyrologist and an epigrapher, but for Egypt. It's always, almost always Egypt, except of course this inscription from Delphi, which we've just seen, that was Greece. So did Bingen regularly edit Latin text? Well, no. You can see it's very small here. Let's go to the list. He didn't really. There were only seven Latin inscriptions that he edited. 7 monolingual and 8 bilingual with some Latin. So that's relatively modest. With whom did he edit text together? That's the final part of the question. If we scroll down, you get a network. You'll see more networks for Trismegistus people, but that's only Egypt, of course, for those of you who are interested also in Egypt, becoming available soon. But this is an editor network, and this shows with whom Jean Bingen has edited text together. So these are the names: Willy Clarisse, Alessandro Rocati, Van Ringen, Parlaska, Aubert, and Mechtergaal. So you can see a bit of his co-editing network for his editions, if you want. I'm looking at the time. Let me just do the next 3 questions. They're relatively easy, and then I think it will be 4 o'clock. And then I don't know, maybe we can have a very short break and have some questions or comments. We'll see. But let's just do the last 3 questions. I know it's already almost 2 hours, and you may be getting tired. I'm also getting a little bit tired, of course, but I think it's better to do those before the break. So these are questions relating to our database time, TM time. So how many texts on lead are firmly dated in the reign of Augustus? So if I go to the central search interface, well, let's try it. Text on lead, and reign of Augustus. Well, it works. Reign of Augustus is the date of the text. So from 1 September 30 to 17 September 14. And lead is the material of the writing surface. So 18 texts on lead dated to the reign of Augustus, and you can get a list of the 18 year. So that's a possibility, but you can also go to TM time. And there, of course, date is the central criterion. So if you type in reign of Augustus, you can also go here, of course, list all rulers, but that takes a bit longer. If you type in reign of Augustus, it gives you a survey of the reign of Augustus. So this is the conversion. It tells you of which dynasty he was a part, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, and this belongs to the Roman period, as you all know, of course. And this is a list of regnal years. So you can even say I'm only interested in year 38 of Augustus, and then this will be limited to year 38 of Augustus only. So you can then have a look for this particular year, which text do we have? And you can say, well, which country? Of course, in this case, it's only Egypt. So, oh, well, I can in fact, if I click Egypt, I get Upper Egypt and the rest. So let me just click Upper Egypt, and then you can fine tune it there if you want to. But let's go back to Augustus. Maybe it's better just to go back here. Augustus, maybe quicker. And text on lead, then you have to select lead year here. So it's, again, perhaps easier with a table, but you'll get the list in a second. So here it is. Okay, you can also use TM time as a converter. So question number 24 is, how can the date indication in Dictio 5 be converted? To do that, you just type in Dictio 5. And then you get a list of possibilities of which year is this. So the indictions start in the 4th century and they last until the 7th century. And so here are the various possibilities. So you can pick one of those, let's say this one, and this is then year 30 of Honorius, and year 21 of Theodosius II, and year 2 of Constantius III becomes year 30 of Honorius and year 21 of Theodosius, because there's a different New Year's date for all of this. Can be very complicated, as you know, all of these calendar systems. And this is indiction year 5. It's a dot indiction. There are different types of indiction. Some start a new year another time, but this is a dot indiction. And the era of Diocletian, year 138. This is the same year. So this is kind of like a date converter, which you can also use. Let's say list all rulers. It starts very early because we cooperate with the people from the Thesaurus Linguae Aegyptiae. But if you scroll down to the, it's very focused on Egypt also to, let's say, Gordianus the first. You can then look at the years of Gordianus the first, since he didn't rule very long. You can then, of course, only select one and then list all text, strict, for instance, and then find a list of those. So only one in this case, this particular text. And finally, the question number 25, to which regnal year does year 270 of the era of Diocletian correspond, and of which dynasty is this ruler part? Well, if you type in, you can also, year 270 of Diocletian should work if you can type Diocletian. So for this, we do not have a automatic suggestion of, so this is era of Diocletian, year 270. We try to accommodate for as many variants as possible. So like year 270 Diocletian, year 270 of Diocletianus, Diocletianus, year 270. We try to make all of those work. It's not always that easy, but it works relatively well. So this ruler, Justinian, is part of the Justinian dynasty, the era of Diocletian. Do we have text on marble dated to this year from Kimitile? So there are two texts on Marble. If I select those, you see that there are two, and the first one is from Kimitile, which is in Italy. And if I click it's not too far from Naples, apparently. So this particular text is what we were looking for. It has a question, which abbreviations occur in this text? So if I scroll down and see abbreviations, I get a survey of abbreviations here. So these 5 abbreviations occur in this text. And the final question is the abbreviation for the day / week and month attested elsewhere? So that's this one, Cal November, for Calendas Novembres. If I click that, then I see that Cal November is attested 3 times as abbreviation for Calendas Novembres and once as abbreviation for Calendis Novembribus. Which one is correct? Well, it's often just, of course, the arbitrary, because the person who has written, has reconstructed the abbreviation sometimes picks the accusative and sometimes picks the ablative. But in fact, there are four attestations, and I don't know why. Oh, yeah, you get only the first one. You can then go here. So this is just this final to show you, of course, what you already know, that if you land on a detail page, you can go anywhere. You can go to EDR, for instance, and get some more information from that particular text there, and get a picture. And they have a lot more pictures than we have. We do not really have photographs. We only have photographs for famous texts, just to make them stand out a little bit more. That's all. Okay. Well, I see it's 4 o'clock. Maybe we should just have the questions now rather than have a break, and because I assume some of you might otherwise leave only for the questions. So I'd say if you have questions, just type them in the chat or comments or whatever. Let me just tell you only one thing, that of course a lot of the functionality that I showed today is also, let's say, premium, reserved only. As you know, we've restricted some functionality of Trismegistus to subscribers, which unfortunately we had to do, because otherwise we would have to stop completely. But yeah, I hope that you see that what is available is worth it. I see someone is typing. So I had no idea half of these features existed. Is it possible for the uploaded recording to have timestamps? I would like to review them in the future. Janne?
I'll look into that. This is the first time I've ever recorded anything. So I'll check if I can add something like timestamps. Do you mean like for the different, when the different questions are tackled during the video? So I can check if I can make that happen. In any case, the videos will be online. I have a part 1 for the part before the break and a part 2 for after the break. And they'll be available anyway, but I'll see if I can add something like timestamps.
Yeah, let's just how can we answer question 14? Yeah, if you want, I can show that to you. I do not think Greek polys in Latin text will work. Let's try it. I sometimes do not know what works in this central search, but no, it's not going to work because it's going to interpret Greek as language, and then no. So for this kind of rather complicated question, you have to go through places. So your interest is in Greek polis. That means places that are in Greece. I mean, of course, not all of the Greek polis were in Greek, but let's make abstraction of that and focus on the Greek part. So I select Greece, and these are the places for Greece. Now, of course, I want to have a status filter. You see here, no status filter. Activate the status filter. Then he says any status. Now, what I'm interested in are cities. So I select city. And now that I've selected city, of course, there are less dots, but I can go further. And once I've selected city, I can select polis. And now there are even fewer dots. So these are the polis that we have in the database as such. And so question number 14 is, how often are these Greek polis attested in Latin texts? So you are interested not just in the places, but in their attestations. So filter attestations. And sorry, it goes back to city. That's not intended. It shouldn't be. So then these are the attestations for Athens, but we're not just interested in all attestations, but we want to look at Latin only. Latin. I always goes back to the cities, so I want the polis. So this is then the result. So this is your question. How often are Greek polis attested in Latin texts? Here is the bit about attestations. Here is the bit about Latin text. And here is the bit about Greek polis only. And you see that it's Nicopolis, especially Corinth, and also Athens. So that's your question answered. So this is, of course, one of the more difficult questions to answer. Not all of them are equally different, of course. I see Geert is typing perhaps another question.
There's another question before.
There's another question, okay. Yeah. Is there anything that could be improved in order for the database to be more user-friendly or any feature to be added? Well, I'd say that that's really something you should answer. So we try to make it as user-friendly as possible. I know it's not always easy. You need to get into it. But the more you want to make possible, the more you need to, well, the less intuitive sometimes it will become. So it's really, sometimes you have to make the effort to learn it. That's also why we have these workshops now. So to show you what is possible and to show you how it's done. And you have to learn this. I know it's you have to get into it. It's like a book. You have to get into a book also, the way it's structured and everything. Any features to be added? Well, I can think of a couple, but we do not now want to add new features in the sense of really doing a lot of areas where we haven't gone before, because the more we start to tackle, the more we need to keep up also, and we are careful with that. So I hope, well, If you can suggest any features or make suggestions as to how to make it more user-friendly, we'd be more than happy to hear from you. And I'm not saying that we're always going to be able to do that, because sometimes what seems very, very easy turns out not to be so easy. And sometimes the other way around also, fortunately. See, there's still someone typing, so. Thank you. So I guess that's it then. We can close here. Thank you. Yeah, that was the idea, to make it easier. That's also why we're going to put this online. And yeah, any comments are welcome. If something doesn't work, please let us know. It's always difficult. Sometimes people don't tell us if something is not working, and we do not always check it ourselves, of course. So any feedback really is more than welcome.
Also, if you find mistakes, if you come across mistakes, or like I said at the beginning, if you notice that certain texts are entered twice in our database and should be merged, or things like that, just send us an email, and then we can take care of it, because we have so much material, we really can't check each and every record ourselves. So if you could help us out there, we'd be really grateful for that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, and yeah, we'll hope to meet you someday in better circumstances, somewhere at some conference when this is allowed again and possible. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Bye.
And see you.